Okay. Hello and welcome to Investment New South Wales and Climate Salad's go-to-market strategy workshop with a very successful founder who has worked incredibly well in the States, Holley Cardew from Carted. My name is Charlotte Connell, Ecosystem Director here at Climate Salad. And before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we meet. For me, that's the Gubbi Gubbi people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Holly, before we get started, just because I have everybody's somewhat attention, I just want to run through a bit of a checklist with everyone to see if we are if we're doing all these things that we said we were going to be doing. So let me share my screen, which I'm very good at doing. Hang on a second. Ignore the 1,000 tabs that are open on my screen. Okay, just a hands up. Who has filled out the form? Most of you have. Who has registered for Verge? Yes, okay. Lauren has, great. Have you booked a space at Verge on the demo space? Yes, all right, a few of you have, brilliant. Have you had your one-on-one session with Mick? Gordon, I love it. Please reach out to us. Have you also, because this could take a bit of time and I haven't done it yet, but have you registered at Esther for your, I think it's $20? Okay, everybody get to it because we are 2 weeks away, basically. And please send through your mentor notes. I'll send this checklist with you to everyone shortly. I know it's a short week, but there's there's not a lot of time between now and when we leave, and I want to make sure that you make the most of that mentor time. Holly, I'm going to hand over to you. For those that aren't familiar with Carted's journey and incredible raises, could you talk us through how you started, how you founded Carted, and also your ambitions and why you went to the States and your traction so far? So that's a lot to cover. But
yeah, no problem.
As an introduction, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Holly. I'm currently the founder of Carted, as Charlotte mentioned. A little bit of backstory on me. So I'm currently in Sydney, but I've spent 8 years on off in San Francisco Bay Area. And Carted's more of a newer company, which I started last year. I actually bootstrapped and founded another company called Pixie. I have 4 apps in the Shopify app store. So if you're familiar with Shopify, it's an e-commerce platform, and then they have extensions where people can build software. And what I did was I automated processes for merchants, like editing their product images, making their images SEO friendly for them at scale. So with those apps, I have about 30,000 merchants across the world who use those apps. And where my journey really started was that I was actually living in regional New South Wales, and I was helping people build e-commerce stores. And then I realized that I could automate a lot of the processes for those merchants. And that's when I decided to build apps that would plug directly into the Shopify app store and be able to serve customers all around the world who had the same problem. I was part of, back in 2014, Telstra had an accelerator program called Muru-D, which is exactly where I met Mick. He was one of the mentors, and is now a very good friend and very, very helpful and a great person to know in the ecosystem. And in 2014, Muru-D, at the end of the cohort, took us to San Francisco, and I realized that that was the place that I really needed to be. People there are very, very ambitious. People there will help you do whatever you need to get to or connect you with the right people. And every coffee you go to or a dinner party, everybody was like, how can I help? Who do you need to meet? And they're always thinking about how they can help you. It doesn't matter who you are. So at the end of the program, I moved to San Francisco on a B1 visa, which is a business visa. It allows you to stay there for 6 months at a time, but it's valid for 5 years. And yes, you need to do your ESTA, otherwise you won't be able to get into the country. That is the other visa that you can go on. It's a visa waiver, so you can go for 3 months at a time. So in 2015, I realized I didn't study at Stanford or Harvard. I didn't work at Google or Facebook. And back in 2015, nobody had remote teams. I had a remote team. I was a non-technical founder building a technical company. And the best thing I could do was join an accelerated program and build a network in the Valley. So I joined an accelerated program called 500 Startups, which at the time was very valuable, and I met some fantastic people. I think since then, over the last 7 years, the ecosystem has completely changed. You don't need to be in the Bay Area. It's definitely helpful to be in the US on the ground, meeting investors and customers and, seeing what the market's like. But I think the market has completely changed. In 2020, I started my 5th Shopify app, which was a shoppable TikTok feed, which allowed merchants to pull in their TikTok videos onto their e-commerce site. It also allowed influencers and creators to pull in their TikTok videos and allowed them to tag products in their videos. So tag the Nike sneakers, the dress from Country Road, the hat from Bloomingdale's over in the US. But what was happening was that people were being redirected away from the video to the merchant's website. So out to your Country Road, to your Nike, to your Urban Outfitters and different brands, and they had different experiences. What I really wanted to build was a multi-merchant checkout. So enabling people to check out in context. And when I was building that, I realized that this was a really hard problem to solve, to be able to integrate with over 1 million stores on the web and have 1 billion products, over 1 billion products, and be able to index all these products in the web. And that we weren't the only people who needed this technology for this app, anybody who wanted to build commerce. So think about if you read a media article and you saw a product, today it links out. If you want to build contextual commerce experiences and be able to serve people with the right products, you need to be in the article. You need to be able to integrate with us to be able to have that experience wherever it is, whether it's in an article, whether it's in social media, whether it's in a game, whether it's in a chat app. So last year, I started Carded, or we pivoted from the TikTok shopping app to Carded. We raised a round led by Blackbird here in Australia. And then we have some US investors as well, and some other great Australian VCs such as Tidal Ventures, Grok Ventures. We have solid investors in Australia. But then I also have high net worth individuals in the US. And I guess I chose the high net worth individuals because they really understood the market and what we were doing and could connect us. We're actually launching next month. And we are launching in the US first with the US product in the US market. We're a US entity, even though I'm here in Australia. I guess I came back during the pandemic to Australia and built out half my team here, and then half the team's global. And that's me in a long nutshell.
What a brilliant introduction. And you're incredibly humble. That was quite a considerable raise you did, Carted. So congratulations. Also, Mick's now on the line, and I'll hand over to Mick, a mentor and longtime friend of yours, to run this with you. But it is interesting because Mick touched on this in terms of US market expectations. There was always this expectation that you had to be on the ground, and here you are in Sydney, being able to launch that. So, it is actually possible to still live out in our beautiful country and be successful in the States. So thank you for illustrating that.
No problem.
I don't know if I didn't let you answer a question there. I kind of made a statement instead. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
No, that's
but
okay.
It was good to understand that you can do that as a real life example. Please feel free to jump in with questions, or put them in the chat, and we'll refer to Holley. But I might hand over to you, Mick, now, considering Holley gave a fantastic introduction to you as a mentor at Miradi and longtime friend of Holley's as well.
Yes, sorry, I was just working on a contract and the call went way over, so sorry I was a bit late jumping onto this. But so thanks so much for joining us, Holley. Holley was in the office of Pollinizer, and I was just like, where does this new source of energy come from? And we went on one of our first trips ever to the US with companies with Holley, and it was just a bit amazing to see your entrepreneurial career grow and grow and grow. So, and you, I think, have also you've been through with 2 companies now, and you have really been scrappy and gone through, I think, the 3 big hard things of building a team, getting customers, and raising capital. 2 areas I'd like to dig into is the sequence of getting that right. Obviously, you can hopefully raise capital and maybe hire a team, go get customers, but you can go in different ways. And the other thing is, since I haven't been there for, it'll be 3 years in 3 weeks that I've left and haven't been back. You know, what's changed, and if anything, and then for that the company should be aware of.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions in one go.
You know me, keep it easy. But yeah, happy to start wherever you think is the priority.
I guess it's what everybody would like to learn most about. I think the biggest thing is that it is really good time. It is really good to spend time on the ground in the US, being close to your customers and being close to the energy. I think Australia is a great place to live, but at the end of the day, our market is too small, and we should be building products for a global market. And it is actually, I would say we're lucky that we speak English, and we're quite similar to the US in terms of how we sell products. I just think they think way bigger than what we think in Australia, and it's just something to be aware of. So when you're speaking to investors, like, don't be shy of your ambition and what you want to do. People do genuinely want to help, and people are also very, like, on the customer side, will be early adopters. People are more than happy to get on the phone and have a call with you and discuss your ideas and see how they can be early adopters. Not everybody, but it's definitely, I think, very much supported in the US market is to be an early adopter, because I think, especially in the Bay Area, I always joke, they're either going to, you're either going to beat them or they want to acquire you. So, like, they don't want to miss out when you're young, because they've seen all these companies like Stripe, like Uber, like Facebook. Those companies didn't exist. And if they weren't close to them, they wouldn't have the opportunity, say Instagram being bought by Meta, Facebook, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to buy Instagram if they weren't close to startups. So I think large companies and also corporates are very, very aware that they need to be close to startups early on. So that, I would say, is quite a difference to the Australian market.
Yeah, the scale and depth of that is really hard to imagine until you immerse yourself into it. Like, the fact that everybody understands ESOP backwards, that everybody understands acquisitions and the capital raising and venture capital pathways. The fact that there's literally just it's the size of Sydney, really, that knows all of that changes the game you're playing in, right? So I think that's immersing yourself in, I think, is really hard. If for some of the companies it's their first trip over there, what are some of the ways they can learn as much as they can without taking a wrong step?
Oh, that's a challenging one. I think go and have coffee with as many people as if you have free time, go through LinkedIn and see who you can get coffee with. People are pretty open to having coffee and talk about your idea, and talk about what you're doing and your challenges, and see how they can help. I think that's something that when I went the first time by myself, I did not understand that concept, that people are happy to just meet and chat. So I definitely take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think it can feel expensive investing a day or half a day in that, but and I think you'll be surprised. I'm really, really high in terms of the talent. Like, they are I think when the first time I went over, I was a bit overwhelmed I was a bit struck, like, oh, you're head of product for Facebook, or you're head of marketing for Box or something. And they're just normal jobs in San Francisco, and they want to chat. Like, part of their job is to meet people. One thing I did was actually I found a cafe, and I booked meetings. I was there from 8 till 8, and I just put my credit card behind the thing, and said, I'm just going to sit there, and every half hour people were coming in, and I just maximized day, and I had lots and lots of half-hour conversations, and it was research, and everyone was just so open to share. So yeah, it feels like it can be expensive, but aim really high in terms of the people you meet. Have you found that as well, Holley, that people, like, in terms of the caliber of people and their depth and understanding? And what about openness? Is it everyone's okay to completely share everything they've got?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that most people are very open to sharing and helping. I think the thing with the Bay Area, two things. It's quite expensive to be there and do nothing. So everybody there is very very intelligent, passionate, and driven to make something of their career. The other thing is that most people started from nothing. Most people there, like, they all built their career, so they all know what it's like to start at the beginning. The other thing is a lot of people there have gone through failure, and failure is like a common theme there. So they all know what it's like you can meet someone who's exited for multi-millions or billions and started another company and it failed the next time. So people, I would say, are pretty humble in the Bay Area and more than willing to help. Yeah.
Nice. And what about customers? So there's I'm interested in terms of thinking about getting your first customers and the difference of pace in Australia, in terms of go to market, and also the difference of the valley bubble versus non-valley. Like, have you got customers out of the valley? Is that different?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're targeting people that are actually mostly in New York and LA. They're not in the valley, so it really depends on your product. I think the other thing is, again, it's more of a cultural thing. Americans grow up in one city in America, and then they typically move for college, and then they typically move for their job. And when somebody's looking for a job, they'll move around. Ask an average American where they've lived, and they've probably lived in 5 cities, whereas that's very uncommon in Australia. So I wouldn't be surprised if your customers are not in the Bay Area. They're more likely to be somewhere else. It's just figuring out where they are. I think the other thing is that, I love Australia. I think we live in a great, great country, but also we're pretty chill. Americans, on the other hand, hustle and work really hard. So they will actually take later calls, or they will make the effort to make a meeting. And I think there is a bit more sense of urgency over there than there is here. So you'll probably find that. The other thing that I think, and I guess it's a bit touching on what we were talking before about meetings, is that, and since I was there, the funding market has completely changed. And okay, the funding market has gone up and gone down in this year, but there is, what I'm talking about changes, I would say there are a lot more funds, there are a lot more investors, there is a lot more capital. They're not deploying as fast this year, but there is a lot more money to be invested than there was in 2014 and 15, which means there's a lot more investors, which actually is benefit for us because we're all founders and they need to deploy that capital and invest in good companies. So I would take the opportunity not to pitch to investors, but basically go to them and speak to them about how they see the market going, and take your thesis of what you believe the future is with your product, and speak to them and get feedback on your thesis, but not necessarily pitch your company. And that's a great way to meet them. And actually, the better way to get to customers, I'm finding for us, is to ask investors to do introductions to their portfolio companies. So for example, if we're focusing on creator tools, there are funds that specifically focus on creator tool companies. So I'll meet with the person who works at the fund, and I'll ask them about the thesis, and then I will ask them about, I would like to speak to these portfolio companies. What are you thinking? Because they sit on the board of the companies. They know exactly what those companies are looking for. So that's something that I found really useful. In terms of customers, I would be putting together a list of people you want to speak to. I wouldn't wait till you get there on the ground. I would be emailing them now and lining up calls. I think the biggest thing you'll find is that people are so used to Zoom meetings now. Everything used to be, I'm available in 4 weeks' time. Let's put a calendar. I'll be up in the city, because they call it like San Francisco City, and then South Bay, like where Palo Alto and Facebook and people who live in the South Bay. So they'll be like, I'm in the city on, Tuesday in 3 weeks' time. So you don't want that to happen when you're there. So people will now have meetings sooner rather than later, which is really helpful. But don't be surprised if people don't necessarily meet up in person. They may not be in the city because they've moved out of the city during the pandemic and they're happy to jump on the phone. So I would just take advantage of the time zone that you're in with them, so it's easier to plan meetings.
Yeah, that's good input. You mentioned for both of those, both investors and customers, meeting early. And I think there's sometimes the trepidation from entrepreneurs to be like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to raise money. I'm not ready to meet a big customer. I don't want to get it wrong. Like the mentioned in terms of talking about your thesis, but you feel like the most are going to be comfortable just having those early exploratory conversations and open to them.
Yeah, I think for investors, I approach it right now as like I tell them I'm not raising, but I still want to hear what they think about the market and what we're doing. And then I see, I mean, for me, the next investor that we bring on board needs to be helpful. And the best way to figure out if they're helpful is tell them what you need help with now and see if they act on it within the next 6 to 12 months. So that's kind of what I've been building relationships with. I also test them like, hey, I'm thinking of going out over like to this target demographic. What do you think? What have you seen? Have you seen this before? I know you invested in this company 5 years ago and they didn't work out. Why not? So I actually ask more about what's happening in the market with investors and their thoughts on what we're doing. I definitely think that you'll never be ready. Like that's fact.
One thing I'll absolutely say is Holley, from the very start, had a it wasn't certainly wasn't arrogance. It was just the confidence of saying, I'm building something and I want you to convince me that you're the right partner for me. So and I think that was a big strength of Holley's, that she was I'm sure you didn't lack fear at times and challenges, but it certainly wasn't like, oh, I really hope an investor gives me money one day. It's I think what Holley's talking about a lot there is actually saying, yeah, I'm exploring. I want to learn why you're a great investor. Show me you can help me. Prove to me that you can help me rather than just tell me. So absolutely think, yeah, back yourself, as Charlotte saying. You mentioned as well, get it from because your customers are the portfolio companies. Is there ways as well to get from the portfolio companies into the investors? And I know we're supposed to be go-to-market focused here, but let's to finish on that, or keep going on that track. But is there ways to get through the portfolio companies? Can that work as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think going back to my comment around, there are so many investors now and there is a lot of capital to deploy. They need to look for great founders too. And the best way they can get to great founders is get referrals from their current portfolio companies. And we have an investor called Tidal Ventures in Sydney. And they came through, like I got the recommendation from one of their founders. So yeah, there's definitely like build, a group of founder friends who you're close to. Usually it's, they're one step ahead of you. So if you're at Series C, you get someone who's like done a Series A. That way you kind of are also learning from, one group ahead of you. But yeah, there's definitely that way as well to meet with investors. But investors right now, we're in a very fortunate position. They are like happy to meet with people to hear about what they're doing. I don't think that was the case. I think there were less investors than companies back in 2015.
Yeah, and I think that the scale is really big. That leads to specialization, so just again, I'll just be really clear about what your focus is. Like being as specific as you can. I've worked with a number of the companies on this call with getting their intro correct, so that's not just, hey, I want to pick your brains. Being really specific about your tech, your sector, your stage, because there's so many investors, they get very, very specialized. Yeah. Thinking about specialization, in terms of growing, Gordon's got a good question around the funnel building, different sales models of getting customers in the US, thinking about your funnel, like how is that, what did you learn about that being different from the US versus Australia, and how do you see it in like, how did you go about establishing that funnel for Carded?
Yeah, I think that's a little challenging for me to comment on because I kind of treat everybody the same. I think if you have a hardware product and you have rollout and there's different contracts that need to be done, then that's slightly different. For Pixie, my first company, it was anyone who basically spoke English could use the software. For Carded, we've specifically gone US first, and that's only because of currency conversion and integration with stores. So we had to pick a market there. So we've basically gone through, we're targeting media publishers first, And we've decided to make a list, and we've decided to create content, so SEO content that will attract those types of customers first. And we've done a lot of first of all, we did in 3 phases. We did a lot of research on who it would be. Then we did research calls with those customers, and now we're in the selling phase. So we made sure that we were basically testing our assumptions in the research piece to understand what messaging resonated with them. So when we did go and do sales, it was like we were bang on with everything we were saying. And we said, oh, can we have a call with you? We're happy to give you a $50 Amazon voucher. So we really treated it as research, and we had research questions first. And then we've now gone into the selling phase of, we've updated our website this week with new messaging. We've got a new sales deck, and it's all targeted around this one customer. And then, does that answer your question? I think the other thing is like looking for where there's big groups of your customers. Do they go to conferences? You don't have to go to the conference, but like, where is that list? Sometimes it depends if you're in the US for longer periods of time. Sometimes you don't even have to go to the conference. You just have to be in the same city as when the conference is on, because people are so used to just having coffees. Like so I went to a conference 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, SASTA. The amount of investors who emailed me and they're like, we're in the area. Can we get coffee? Like, we're not at the conference, but we know you're at the conference. Can we have coffee outside the conference? So that's quite common, especially in Vegas. If like any of your customers are going to a conference in Vegas, it's very common for people to just fly to Vegas, hang in the area, and have coffees throughout the conference day at a cafe nearby.
That's a really good steer, both on 2 fronts. One is allowing room for that. So booking out your schedule aggressively in advance doesn't leave opportunities for those quick catch-ups, which will be opportunistic. That is really, really key. But also just knowing that that's possible, right? There'll be a lot of people at Verge and in San Francisco who are not necessarily going to be at the conference. They're just there to actually get, to meet good people. So, yeah, okay, that's
social
great.
media helps. Push on social media. Put on LinkedIn. Like, that's also how I get meetings. People know where I am at what time. I'll share that I'll be in San Francisco. I'll share that I'll be in New York. It really works, and it really helps. Americans are very different to Australians in terms of like hustling and meeting. Like, I had people emailing, be like, or messaging me on LinkedIn being like, I see you're in New York. I've been following you for a while. Can we get coffee? And I'll be in the space. And it might be another founder who's at the same stage. And we could swap notes on like, okay, what are you seeing in the market? Which investors should we meet with? How are you selling your product versus how am I selling my product? Have you thought about like content strategies? Have you thought about how are you bringing in a product person into your team, or how are you running your engineering team? So it is very helpful to have other founder friends.
Yeah, great. And just on that, Kara's asked a question around in terms of not being a technical co-founder or a Stanford bro or worked at Facebook or Google. Did you find it challenging to kind of establish your credibility? Like, how did you've obviously built a great reputation over there over 10 years, but if like in terms of start kicking it off, is it just be bold and get out there, or is there strategies you can do to elevate?
I think the strategy is actually writing content. So writing on Medium and really posting your thoughts. That's helped me a lot. So I guess it was challenging at the beginning, and then 500 Startups was credibility in the Bay Area. But then just in my industry and ecosystem, so I would write content for Shopify as a guest blogger, and it would link back to Pixie. And then I started doing more and more. So take a company that does have a name and see if you can guest blog for them, or write your thoughts and thesis in Medium. So if you go into my Medium, I talk about like building teams around like where I see the future of commerce. So it's all the future of our industry. And then also how I grow and build a company, like how I build remote teams, how I hire, how we like ran our company offsite. So then if anybody's looking, whether that is a customer or a potential hire or an investor, they know how I'm like thinking about running the company, and they also see what I'm thinking in terms of the future. And then when I write about the product too, which is more so on the Cardew.com blog, then they can see what we're thinking and what we're doing and if it resonates with them. So I think that actually gives a lot of credibility. I think we're lucky. The times have changed. People are not like so set on where you are, what school you went to, and what company you worked at, that's definitely changed. But it helps if you have build up credibility in written form online where people can research you without having to speak with you.
Just on that, in terms of the differences between markets, if some of the companies have got sort of MVPs and pilot customers in Australia, but they may not be in the US yet. It used to be a lot more like, oh, well, I'm only interested in the US. And are you going to be here? Like, any thoughts around thinking about that as, first of all, from the customer perspective, like does product market fit in Australia translate to product market fit in the US? And what does it mean for you as a business expanding out?
Yeah, I think it depends on the product. If there's, how well you'll get product market fit. And like if it can easily be translated to the US market. I think it definitely helps being on the ground and talking to customers. Like if a customer emails you, just don't talk in Australian time zones, like talk in their time zone. You can be Aussie and just act as if you're there, even if you're back here. The next best thing is to actually hire an American, because as much as we don't like it, and as much as people do like Australians, at the end of the day, having someone who has an American accent, when it comes to selling, I think can really help with the, with who they're speaking with. We have a US person on the West Coast who does business development for us. I think the other big thing that has helped me is understanding how the Bay Area works. So you're not turning up, and this is probably any market, this is not just the Bay Area, but you're not turning up as, starry-eyed, which we all will be, and that's like normal, but it gives me credibility straight away when I understand the ins and outs of how the Bay Area functions, and down to just simple things. They're like, oh, you're an Australian, you don't really know. They don't say that, but that's the vibe. And then you just mention like your favorite coffee place in San Francisco, and they're like, oh, okay, So unfortunately, there is a little bit of click in that way, in terms of it kind of gives them like, they want to know that you're serious. The Bay Area for a long time was like a lot of people coming in, trying to get rich quickly and leaving. And the real true people in the Bay Area don't enjoy that as much. So it's like nearly, how do you establish credibility at the beginning? And then I think going back to customers, people will be willing to buy anywhere, but I would try and make it as just remember they've probably never been to Australia. Some of them probably think that New Zealand is in Australia. And so you just want to be mindful of like how they, sight glass, exactly, you know it. You just want to be cautious of how they will best buy your product, I think. And if that means hiring someone for 5 hours a week to answer the phone, even to redirect the call and just be like, the CEO or the founder's busy right now, I'll get you back to you. That's like better if it means you're going to be able to close a deal.
I just realized my favorite coffee place, Red Door on 111 Mina, is closed. So that's not happy with that. But Sight Glass on 7th is still open, which is good. So thanks, some really good comments there. And I think no pressure for, if it's your first trip over there, that you have to be an expert. Like I think one thing Australia is respected for is our honesty and humility, and it's okay to say, yep, first time here, but look, I'm building a big business and I'm committed to it. Like that's the key, right? Is that you are committed to that, and you're exploring and finding the way, which I think is really valuable. Tell me about hiring. There's a temptation sometimes for people to be like, oh great, I'll just hire someone and they'll solve all my sales problems. Can you tell me about, in terms of, you mentioned biz dev rather than maybe sales, and I know SaaStr, they sometimes have eight different people in the sales funnel doing individual tasks, but for a startup that's impossible. Can you talk about the founder role and how they might be thinking about kicking off a sales team in the US?
Yeah, sure. I probably wouldn't hire sales for a while. To be honest, like Pixie, we didn't have sales. It's been inbound always. We had processes for virtual assistants to help do sort of outbound. But I think it's really important the founder or the founding team does the sales first. And at the beginning, it doesn't have to be treated as sales directly. Why I call it business development is it's really that research piece until you have product market fit. People in the Bay Area expect you to be like figuring things out. They don't expect you to have it all figured out. They expect you to be doing, they basically say like, tell me your assumptions and then show me which ones you've proved and disproved. And like, what are you doing to prove and disprove them? That doesn't mean you need to have your perfect sales funnel figured out. You could, as a founder, figure out who is your target customer that you're going after first? Who are you going to go after next? What are the assumptions you want to test with them? And what is your process at the moment that you think is the best way to get in front of them? Then that way you'll be like, okay, when I raise money, I can hire another person who's going to then take on this role and another person. But I would not, like, I know I made the comment about having someone on the phone who's American, but I would not just outsource your sales problems to somebody else, especially if you don't have a working relationship with them, because they will not get you the results that you want.
Yeah, that's a really good steer. That's the one thing I guess that Holly's talking about there is that the entire Bay Area understands startups. So they, in every single person who goes there will have this experience where they'll meet somebody, either their Uber driver who's like, oh yeah, I run 2 startups, or and everyone just knows everything about it. It's hard to judge when you're coming from Australia, when it's, we have to get people in a room still, like it's bigger, but that size is really, really significant. Excellent. So Gordon, I know you've got a few questions you want to jump off and ask Holly.
Sure. Hi, Holly. Long time.
Hi. Yes.
How you going?
Well, thank you.
So our problem is we're selling to enterprise customers. Average contract value is north of 100K, Australian anyway. And we have my co-founder and head of sales are responsible for sales. I guess what we're thinking about is, well, anything you want to say about selling to American, multi-brand fashion retailers, product discovery platforms, but also about building a good top of funnel for that sales pathway.
So I'm just going to say that I haven't done enterprise sales before. We've been really focused on SMB, so I don't feel like I'm the best person to give you that advice. But I do think literally creating a list using outreach. Like if I'm going down to the detail, we use outreach to do all of our outreach and funnel sequencing, and getting on the phone with them and having a call and figuring out who at the company is the best person to speak to and who are the people who are responsible for the decision and what that looks like in closing. If it's very new, I would just be focused on getting pilot customers and getting 3 to 5 of them who can really test out the product and be your first case study, that then you can say, like, this is, again, back to like, this is the target audience that we want. Let's get a pilot. It doesn't have to be the 100K deal right now. Can you do something that's a 10K or 20K? And then based on success of that, then you roll out a larger contract with them. That's probably what I would be doing.
I think that's super useful. But we're past that. We have 7 enterprise customers. Our problem now is like, how do we build the funnel so we get more?
So for me, I would be wanting to know exactly where they are. Like, who is that person, profiling that person? Do they go to conferences? What content are they reading? What are they consuming? Are they reading blogs? Are they like, how can you create that content that they can take internally, or like, where do they hang? So for me, if I think back to Pixie, I was always writing like how to optimize your e-commerce store ebooks. And then people would come through the content, through the funnel on our site. The other biggest thing we did was, originally we were standalone software that sat on our website, pixie.com, and then we built app integrations directly into the app store. And the Shopify app store gives us 100 leads a day. So 100 new merchants are signing up every single day. So it's thinking about, okay, again, sorry, I don't know your product, but like, is it of use for them to have an integration with Salesforce, and can you sit in have a simple app in the Salesforce app store where people can see it? And then that way you're leveraging larger companies and their organic traffic and then they can see your app and your software and sign up. And that might be Slack, it might be Trello. Like all of these large software companies now have app stores. So it's just, I don't know, like I just need to understand more about exactly your product and customer. Have you thought about there's the big online retail association over is it National Retail Association, NRA, in January in New York. That one's solid. Yeah.
One thing that I think might be useful for multiple people that you touch on there is partnerships or sales through channels. There's a massive difference between being on a marketplace where you can kind of add it and control it versus big partnerships. Some companies get lured in by partnerships early and it can work and it can't work. Do you have experience in trying to partner for growth?
Yeah, so we also tried to partner with Wix, which you may be familiar with, the website builder. They were building an app store, but then they were completely different to Shopify, BigCommerce, and Magento. They wanted to control the whole experience down to where our buttons were, how we built it. We were a tiny team of 5 people, and you've got this like publicly listed company telling you exactly how to build your app on what cadence, and it kind of killed us. We ended up pulling out after so many weeks of development. I was like, we could have built 3 Shopify apps in this time that we were building one with them. And there was absolutely no guarantee that they were going to push us in front of their customers or what the traffic was like to their app store. So for me, I decided that we should pull out because I didn't want to like keep sinking resources into it when we didn't even know that we would get the ROI on the return on investment for the app integration. So that's definitely a partnership that could have gone really well, but they just wouldn't commit to sharing, you know, us in a newsletter or pushing us to some of their customers.
And for me, that's a timing thing for me. Sorry. Go
no, I was going to talk about another partnership with Facebook. They came directly to us wanting to sell us to their customers. They actually don't have relationships with their customers, surprisingly. Like Facebook wanted to sell to the SMBs that we could do all of their photo editing and photo optimization. And they ran a test. They barely wanted to pay. And they ran a test with their users, emailing them out the service, and they didn't get a response rate. So just because it's a massive company doesn't mean that they have good, solid relationships with their customers that are going to use your product.
And oftentimes the loss in your touch with a customer isn't worth it, especially early days.
Yeah.
My rough rule of thumb is that partners are a terrible way to get product market fit, but a great way to scale. But typically post 10 million in revenue. I don't think I've had any success pre 10 million in revenue, but that could be me. Any more questions for Holley from the team? Hand up or unmute, be bold.
Holley, I know you kind of covered this, and I thought I'll ask this because I know a few of the cohort are after those high net worth individuals as investors and to partner with. And you mentioned they were part of the investment at seed round. Where do you meet them? How do you build those relationships? Because it seems a bit like, is it the more fancier coffee places?
No, actually, I just met them on Twitter. Literally. You'll laugh. I got the founder of Honey, who sold to PayPal for $5 billion off a tweet.
What did the tweet say?
Said, I would like Ryan on my cap table. And he said, then he replied, he said, let's have a call. These people, number one, were exactly where we were. Ryan built a Chrome extension that sold to PayPal, and every single person doubted it. He had a shop. I don't know if you're familiar, but basically when you check out, it's a Chrome extension that gives you a promo code. It scans the internet for promo codes. It gives you a discount code. And everyone said, like, you can't build a big company on a Chrome extension. And it was acquired in 2020 or end of 2019 from PayPal for close to $5 billion. And so these people, I guess they also want to help the underdog. Like, they were there once too. And when you want a small check-in and it's something that they believe in, like, they really do want to help the next person create that and build that. So that was one. Another one, we have the co-founder of Google Drive on our cap table. So he was at Google for 14 years. He found us on LinkedIn. Somebody else, high net worth individual, came through a customer. So that's the other way, is like customers. So one of our customers was a brand here in Australia called Princess Polly. This guy sits on the board of Princess Polly, and he, obviously the CEO was talking about our product and how valuable it was. These high net worth individuals are also looking to deploy their capital and looking for great founders. And the best way they can like figure out who great founders are and what great products are is ask their current portfolio companies, like, what do you use in your business that's really valuable? So they're kind of how we got coffees with those people. People are willing to meet.
I think I'll preface that by, I'll caveat that by saying that Holley worked very hard ahead of time around understanding her market, the product and customers. So whenever, like she did build a body of content, and that was Holley's way to do that. I think people got to find their own way. Your way might be having a few very, very, very strong relationships. Your way could be about going through building industry association or community. Like everybody finds their own way. Holley's was about understanding the industry, writing and sharing and helping everybody, and also being, Holley's one of the top 10 people I've ever worked with in terms of follow-up. So you just will get a follow-up, it'll be on message, it's useful and interesting. Like she's just great with follow, and that, so finding your own way, I think is really, really important. But the key is that actually that these are people, they want to help, they love the feeling of being involved in a startup, and they might be past it now, and they're like, they can do that vicariously through you. And again, don't be too fan, be like, oh, that you're so amazing, and like they're just normal people. Just be meet with them, say, I'm building something too, and you can have both ambition and humility together. Like they're not trade-offs. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think the key thing here is like, I really now go into all of my meetings is that like, just there is a lot of money out there. Don't feel you need to ask for money. Just don't, like, it sounds really odd, but if you build a big business and a good business with solid team and solid customers and a solid product, the money will follow. And I just think like my approach in the last, and I know the market's been slightly different, but my approach has really been about like, go, and they always say it, go and ask for advice. Just go and ask, like, take 2 questions, like, hey, can we get coffee? This, like, I'm really thinking about how I should hire this next engineering manager for this team. And I'm really thinking about how we like get our first US customer, because we've got seven enterprises in Australia. Like, start up front with like what you've done, and then like the next things you really need help with. And don't worry about asking them to be an advisor, investing. They will just naturally be. You also don't want to ask for money for someone who's not going to help. So they will either naturally, like in the coffee, be like, oh, I could introduce you to this person. Or, oh, have you thought about this? As soon as they're bought in, and I have this too. I met with a founder yesterday who's in my space, and they were telling me all about their vision. I was like, oh, I could so ask them if I could invest, because like I'm bought in. Like I want to see him win, and I want to see the next steps. And that's what happens with these people. So I would not approach it as, oh, this is a high net worth individual, I need to ask them for money. I would take it as like, what are they really good at, and what is your biggest challenge right now? And they won't be able to give you the answer, but it's one other perspective that you can get, that you can gather and collect to then make a better informed decision.
Hi, Holley. It's Grant McDowell here from Nice to meet you. Thanks for your contribution today. Very, very insightful. I just want to pick up on a tweet that Nick put out this last week. In Australia, it takes 50 coffees to make any kind of progress at all. And in America, it seems that 1 coffee to pilot, it's just like this seems quite immediate. So, but I'm just observing your experience of when, at what point you have turned this around, because it seems like you're attuned to the inbound, whereas for us, it's still there's very much this needy outbound energy. And you've taken this and pivoted it back to letting that kind of come to you. And I imagine that's taken a decade to build. So these things aren't just overnight, but that's the muscle how I'd like to kind of see and see in the way we approach the US, because it's such an enormous market in the energy tech sector where we are. So my question is, at what point did you notice this change from being in a kind of needy space to, sorry to use that word, but it just kind of articulates where we're at, into starting to pivot the other way, where you're having this inbound interest?
So I'll just, good question. I just want to clarify that, like, I'm back at that stage with Carded. Carded is new. Carded is like going after bigger companies. I am exactly where you are.
Okay.
Just not the case with Pixie. So
Sure.
I'm still figuring this out ourselves. We literally have a list, hundreds of people who we think we need to speak to, and multiple people at each company. We're going after large media companies. So think of like your News Corp, your Hearst, there's CNN, like there's so many media companies that owns. It's really figuring out how they operate and literally trying anything possible to get on a call, like
Sure.
emailing them, follow-up email, LinkedIn,
Hustle.
asking our investors if they have introductions, prioritizing who you think would be best. You will have to A/B test your emails. I think that's the only way to be able to get in front of people. I think the biggest unlock for me has been figuring out that we can also go through the corp dev team. So a lot of these large companies have corporate development teams, which means they're either like doing acquisitions, but for the company, but they're really, or investments, but they're really figuring out, they understand what the company needs. And then if there's a gap, they typically do an M&A. So I feel that has worked for us, and that also might work for you in your situation if you're going after larger enterprise. The other thing with the corp dev people is they're usually incredibly smart, and they're more than happy, because again, they don't want to miss out on an acquisition opportunity. So they'll be more than happy to talk to you about what you're doing, and you can get feedback from them. Sometimes they've also been in startups too.
We've been here in Australia in those corp devs environments for a long time, and we just seem like we're on ice with them. They won't make that commitment and just say, okay, we'll roll the product up, let's test it across 100,000. They want to test us across 10. They're not thinking big. Whereas in the US, I'm hoping that the corp dev will have the authority to think bigger. Because we're very much limited by small test.
I don't know if corp dev will have the ability to do that. So I'm just talking on my from my personal experience, going to $1 billion media company, got in through corp dev. Loveliest person. You basically want to do the introductions to the people you think you need to speak to who is going to be affected by your product. I don't think corp dev will make the ultimate decision in a rollout. They may be from an M&A point of view, but again, this is so new to me. So I'm figuring it out too.
Good on you. Thanks very much for your contribution.
No worries.
Amazing, Holley. Really helpful. Are you going to be in San Francisco? We're going to see you at.
I'm in Sydney at the moment.
Oh,
so
I didn't know where you are. I've got to follow you more on LinkedIn and Twitter. Yeah, that's great. Really, really appreciate your time and input here, Holley. That's great. And there's got a lot of great content Holley's already put out there, with some good profile pieces around that we can share as well. So unless there's any final questions, I think we'll wrap it up with a quick screenshot. Oh, Pat.
Holley, what was their reaction to you as a non-technical founder? Yeah,
it was very different before. So I think now it's changed. Like, people don't really mind. If you're a really good CEO and you can hire the right people on your team and you can show progress, they don't really, it's not the most important thing. I think what's important is if you are building a technology product, that you have a really solid engineering team and an engineering leader.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Thank you.
I think the key message Holley said is, if you focus on your commitment to solve a big problem and build a big business, then the rest will follow, technical or not. And a key thing is a follow-up, right? Just saying it once is not enough. Like, you've got to follow through with execution. But yeah, I think that's the big theme, is be committed to solving your problem. So if anyone is available to throw you a quick screenshot on, I'm going to throw your videos on, a quick screenshot so everyone can smile. I'll do one. Ready? We're going to count. Whoa, we got a few more on. 3, 2, 1. Huge thanks, Holley. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for being on the call, and a big thanks to Investment New South Wales for the support on this trade mission. And look forward to catching up for everyone at Sightglass.